Let me tell you something. If you've ever lived in a neighborhood where someone else thinks they own your property, your choices, and your dignity, this story is going to hit different. Because what happened to me last month, it wasn't just about a fence. It wasn't just about a color. It was about a man who gave 20 years of his life to this country. And an HOA board that thought their little rulebook mattered more than his memory. My name is Marcus. And last month, my homeowners association fined me $10,000. $10,000. Not because I was running a business out of my garage. Not because I had trash piled up in my yard. Not because I was blasting music at 3 a.m. or parking broken down cars on the street. No, they fined me $10,000 because I painted my fence olive green. Let that sink in for a second. Olive green, a color you see on every tree in the fall. A color that blends with nature. A color so subtle most people wouldn't even notice it unless you pointed it out. But my HOA, they noticed. Oh, they noticed. And they didn't just notice, they treated it like I had committed a federal crime. But here's the part that makes this story personal. That olive green, that wasn't just some random color I picked off a shelf at Home Depot because it was on sale. That was my dad's color. Staff Sergeant William Turner. 20 years in the United States Army. 3 deployments. 2 Purple Hearts. 1 flag folded at his funeral 8 months ago while I stood there trying not to fall apart in front of my kids. My dad wore olive green every single day of his service. That color was his identity. That color meant sacrifice. That color meant something. And when he passed, I promised myself I would keep his memory alive in every way I could. So when I moved into this house, the house I bought with the inheritance he left me, I decided to paint the fence out front olive green. His green. Army green. The green that represented everything he stood for. Took me 3 weekends to do it. I sanded every board by hand. I primed every slat. I used 2 coats of the exact shade, Sherwin-Williams Olive Grove, number 7734. I looked it up. I matched it to his old uniform jacket that still hangs in my closet. Every single brush stroke felt like I was having a conversation with him. Like he was standing right behind me saying, "Looking good, son. Looking real good." My kids helped me. My daughter Lily, she's 7. She painted the bottom parts she could reach. My son Daniel, he's 12, he handled the posts. We laughed. We told stories about Grandpa. We played his favorite Creedence Clearwater Revival album on a speaker in the yard. It was the first time since the funeral that our house felt like a home again. And for 2 weeks, everything was perfect. Neighbors walked by and said it looked great. My buddy Ray from across the street said it gave the block some character. The mailman even stopped one day and said, "That's a sharp-looking fence, brother." I felt proud. I felt like my dad would have been proud too. Then the letter came. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are when I pick up Lily from ballet. I walked to the mailbox, grabbed the stack of envelopes, and there it was. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. From the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. I opened it standing right there on the driveway, and I swear my blood pressure doubled with every line I read. Dear Mr. Turner, it has come to the attention of the Willowbrook Estates HOA Board of Directors that modifications have been made to the exterior of your property located at 4717 Briarwood Lane without prior written approval. Specifically, the perimeter fence has been painted in a color not included in the approved community color palette. This is a direct violation of Section 14, subsection 3, paragraph B of the Willowbrook Estates Community Guidelines, which states that all exterior modifications must conform to pre-approved earth-neutral tones as outlined in Addendum C of the HOA Covenant. Earth-neutral tones. That's what they called it. And apparently olive green, a color that literally comes from the earth, wasn't neutral enough for them. But that wasn't the part that made me lose it. The next paragraph? That's where they crossed the line. You are hereby assessed a fine of $10,000 for noncompliance. You have 7 calendar days from receipt of this notice to restore the fence to an approved color. Failure to comply will result in additional daily fines of $250 and may result in the placement of a lien on your property. This matter is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. $10,000. For a fence color. 7 days or they'd start taking my house. I stood there on that driveway for a full 5 minutes without moving. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. The kind of rage that starts in your chest and spreads to your fingertips. The kind that makes your jaw clench so tight you think your teeth might crack. I knew exactly who was behind this. Karen Whitfield, HOA board president. The woman who moved into this neighborhood 3 years ago and immediately decided she was the queen of Willowbrook Estates. The same woman who fined old Mr. Henderson $300 because his rose bushes were 2 inches taller than the approved height. The same woman who sent a formal complaint to the Petersons because their daughter's bicycle was visible from the street. A bicycle. A child's bicycle. Apparently it was disrupting the visual harmony of the community. Karen had been eyeing my fence since the day I finished it. I caught her driving by slowly 3 times that first week. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stared at that fence like it had personally offended her bloodline. So I called her. I picked up the phone, dialed the HOA office number, and waited. She answered on the second ring like she'd been sitting there waiting for me. Karen, it's Marcus Turner on Briarwood Lane. I got your letter. Oh yes, Mr. Turner. I was expecting your call. I took a deep breath. I stayed calm. I explained the situation. I told her about my dad. I told her about his service. I told her what that color meant to me and my family. I even told her about Lily painting the bottom of the fence with her tiny hands. I thought, maybe if she understood the story behind it, she'd show some compassion. Some basic human decency. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not an awkward chuckle. A real laugh. Like I had just told her the funniest joke she'd heard all year. Mr. Turner, she said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. Rules are rules. I don't care if your father was the President of the United States. That fence is a blight on this community, and you will repaint it or you will pay the consequences. End of discussion. She hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding that phone, staring at the wall, listening to the dial tone. And something clicked. Something deep inside me shifted. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. Crystal clear, ice cold, calculated clarity. She wanted to play games? Fine, I'll play. But I play to win. That night, after the kids went to bed, I sat down at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, my laptop, and a printed copy of every single page of the Willowbrook Estates HOA bylaws. All 47 pages. I read every word, every clause, every subsection, every footnote. I read them once, then I read them again. And then I read them a third time with a highlighter and a legal pad. And that's when I found it. Page 31, Section 22, Paragraph A, the section on approved exterior house colors. It listed exactly what was banned, and I quote, bright, neon, or fluorescent colors including but not limited to hot pink, electric blue, neon yellow, and lime green. That was it. That was the entire restriction. Bright, neon, fluorescent. That's all they banned. You know what's not bright? You know what's not neon? You know what's not fluorescent? Camouflage. Woodland camouflage is made of dark green, brown, tan, and black. Every single one of those colors? Earth tones. Every single one of those colors? Already approved on the HOA palette. They just never imagined someone would use all of them. Together. On an entire house. I closed my laptop. I leaned back in my chair. And for the first time in 8 months, I smiled. Because Karen Whitfield had no idea what was coming. She fined me $10,000 for honoring my father with a fence. So I was about to turn my entire house into a tribute he'd salute from heaven. And the best part? There wasn't a single thing the HOA could do about it. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Didn't need an alarm. My eyes just opened at 4:47 a.m. like my body already knew today was different. Today wasn't about grieving. Today wasn't about being angry. Today was about getting even. I made my coffee. Same mug my dad gave me when I graduated college. It had a faded American flag on the side and the words "Freedom isn't free" underneath. I sat at the same kitchen table where I'd found the loophole the night before. My legal pad was still there. My highlighter was still uncapped. and that printed copy of the HOA bylaws was still open to page 31. I read it one more time just to make sure I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't. The first thing I did was call my buddy Jake. Jake Morrison. He lives 3 houses down on the same side of the street. Retired contractor. Hands like sandpaper. Heart of gold. He'd been in this neighborhood 6 years longer than me and had his own war stories with the HOA. Last summer Karen fined him $500 for hanging an American flag from his porch on the 4th of July. An American flag. On Independence Day. Her reason? The bracket he used wasn't an approved mounting fixture. Jake fought it for 3 months. Lost. Paid the fine. And he's hated Karen Whitfield ever since. I called him at 6 a.m. He picked up on the first ring. Jake, it's Marcus. I need your help with something. Brother, it's 6 in the morning. Someone better be dead. Nobody's dead. But Karen's about to wish she was. There was a pause. Then Jake laughed. That deep belly laugh that shakes his whole body. I'm listening, he said. I told him everything. The fine. The phone call. Karen laughing at my dad's memory. And then I told him about the loophole. The camouflage plan. Every detail. When I finished there was silence on the other end for about 10 seconds. Then Jake said 5 words I'll never forget. I'll bring my paint sprayer. By 7 a.m. Jake was at my kitchen table. We had the bylaws spread out between us like a battle map. He read the color restriction section 3 times. Then he looked up at me and grinned. They really didn't think this through, did they? He said. No, they did not. We spent the next 2 hours planning. Jake knew paint. He knew surfaces. He knew what would stick to vinyl siding and what would peel off in 6 months. This wasn't going to be some sloppy spray paint job that looked like a frat house prank. No, this was going to be professional, clean, military precision. The kind of paint job my dad would have inspected and approved. Jake pulled up his phone and found a company that sells authentic military-spec woodland camouflage paint. Not costume paint. Not craft store nonsense. Real-deal operational camouflage coating designed for vehicles and field equipment. It came in 4 colors: forest green, bark brown, desert tan, and matte black. Every single one of them fell within the HOA-approved earth-tone palette. I ordered 5 gallons of each. Overnight shipping. $312. Best money I ever spent. While we waited for the paint to arrive, I decided to do something else. I walked the neighborhood, knocked on doors, talked to people, and what I heard made my blood boil even hotter. The Hendersons on Maple Court. Fined $800 because their mailbox post was leaning 2 degrees to the left. 2 degrees. Karen measured it with a level. The Patels on Birchwood Drive. Fined $1,200 because they installed a security camera on their front porch without submitting a modification request form. In a neighborhood where 3 cars had been broken into that same month. Old Mrs. Calloway on the corner of Briarwood and Oak. 83 years old. Widowed. Living on Social Security. Fined $300 because her grass was a 1/4 inch above the approved height during a week she was in the hospital recovering from hip surgery. Karen sent the fine to her hospital room. Every house I visited had a story. Every neighbor had a scar from Karen's reign. And every single one of them lit up when I told them what I was planning. Mr. Henderson shook my hand and said, "Give her hell, son." Mrs. Patel handed me a plate of homemade samosas and said, "We will be watching from our window and cheering." Mrs. Calloway grabbed my arm with both hands, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Your father raised a good man. Make him proud." That one almost broke me. I had to turn around and pretend I was looking at her garden so she wouldn't see my eyes watering. By the time I got home, the neighborhood was buzzing. Group chats were lighting up. People were texting each other. For the first time in years, Willowbrook Estates felt like an actual community. Not because of the HOA. In spite of it. The paint arrived the next afternoon. 4 heavy boxes sitting on my porch like ammunition crates. Jake came over with his sprayer, his rollers, his tape, and a 6-pack of cold beer. My son Daniel carried the boxes inside. My daughter Lily asked if she could help again. I told her absolutely. This was a family operation. That night we sat in the garage with the door open. The paint cans were lined up on the workbench. The stencil patterns were printed and cut. Jake had sketched a layout on graph paper showing exactly where each color would go for maximum camouflage effect. It looked like a military briefing. I stood there looking at those cans. Forest green, bark brown, desert tan, matte black, my dad's colors, my dad's world, about to cover my entire house like a suit of armor. I picked up a brush, dipped it in the forest green, held it up to the light. This one's for you, Dad. Tomorrow we paint. Now before I tell you about the painting, and trust me we're getting there, you need to understand something about Karen Whitfield. Because this woman didn't just wake up one morning and decide to ruin my life. No, she had been practicing. She had been training for this moment for 3 straight years. And the people of Willowbrook Estates were her punching bags. Karen moved into this neighborhood in 2021. Nobody asked her to join the HOA board. She volunteered. Showed up to the annual meeting in a blazer and heels like she was interviewing for Congress. Gave a 15-minute speech about community standards and property values and neighborhood excellence. Most people were just there for the free pizza. Nobody was really paying attention. She ran unopposed because nobody else wanted the job. And just like that, Karen Whitfield became the most powerful person in Willowbrook Estates. The changes started small. First, it was the trash cans. New rule. All trash cans must be stored inside the garage within 1 hour of pickup. Not 2 hours. Not by the end of the day. 1 hour. Miss the window. $50 fine. No warnings. No exceptions. People started setting alarms on their phones for trash day like it was a medical appointment. Then came the lawn measurements. Karen bought a ruler. An actual metal ruler. And she walked the neighborhood every Saturday morning measuring grass height. The limit was 3.5 inches. Not 4. Not 3 3/4. 3.5. If your grass hit 3.6 inches, you got a citation in your mailbox by Sunday morning. She measured Mrs. Calloway's lawn while the woman was in the hospital. Sent the fine to her room at St. Mary's Medical Center. The nurse thought it was a joke. It wasn't. Then came the decoration restrictions. No wreaths larger than 18 inches in diameter. No welcome mats with unapproved patterns. No string lights after January 15th. The Rodriguez family on Elm Street had their Christmas lights up until January 20th because Mr. Rodriguez threw out his back and couldn't climb the ladder. Karen fined them $400. When Mrs. Rodriguez called to explain, she was told the board does not consider medical issues as valid exemptions. Then came the vehicle rules. No trucks over a certain height in the driveway. No cars with visible rust. No bumper stickers that could be considered political or offensive. My neighbor Steve got a warning letter because he had a stick figure family decal on his minivan. Karen said it was a visual distraction. A stick figure family. On a minivan. In a neighborhood full of families. But the thing that really showed everyone who Karen was? The park bench incident. There's a small community park at the end of Briarwood Lane. Nothing fancy. A swing set. A sandbox. A little patch of grass where kids play soccer after school. 2 years ago, the neighborhood pitched in to buy a memorial bench for Tommy Gelson. Tommy was a teenager who lived on our street. Sweet kid. Always mowing lawns for extra cash. Always helping Mrs. Calloway carry her groceries. He died in a car accident his junior year of high school. The whole neighborhood was devastated. So we collected money. We bought a beautiful wooden bench. We put a brass plaque on it that said, "In loving memory of Tommy Gelson. Forever part of our neighborhood." We placed it under the big maple tree in the park where Tommy used to sit and read comic books after school. Karen had it removed. Said it wasn't an approved structure. Said the bench didn't match the community aesthetic guidelines. Said the plaque was a liability issue. She had 2 guys from a landscaping company haul it away on a Tuesday morning while the kids were at school. By the time anyone noticed, it was gone. Sitting in a storage unit somewhere. Tommy's mom drove by that afternoon and saw the empty spot under the tree. She sat in her car and cried for 20 minutes. Nobody fought it. That's the thing. Nobody fought any of it. Because Karen had built a system. A machine. She had the bylaws. She had the fines. She had the threats of liens and lawsuits and legal action. She had a lawyer on retainer who sent cease and desist letters like they were birthday cards. People were scared. People were tired. People just wanted to live in their homes without being harassed every other week. And that's exactly what Karen counted on. Silence. Compliance. Surrender. She ran that HOA like a dictatorship. Board meetings were held at 2 p.m. on weekdays when everyone was at work. Agendas were never shared in advance. Minutes were never published. Budget reports were vague. Where did the dues go? Nobody knew. How much was in the reserve fund? Nobody knew. What was Karen's salary as board president? Nobody knew. And if you asked too many questions, you'd find a new violation notice in your mailbox the following week. Coincidence? Sure, Karen. Sure. There were two other people on the board. Bob Myers, the treasurer, and Susan Carmichael, the secretary. Bob was a retired accountant who never spoke unless Karen told him to. Susan was Karen's neighbor and best friend. They voted together on everything. 3-0. Every time. Democracy at its finest. So when I got that $10,000 fine for my olive green fence, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I wasn't just fighting for my dad's memory. I was fighting for the Hendersons, for the Patels, for Mrs. Calloway, for Steve and his minivan, for the Rodriguez family, for Tommy Gelson's mom who never got to see her son's bench again. This neighborhood had been bullied long enough. Karen had been untouchable long enough. And that loophole I found on page 31 of her precious bylaws? That wasn't just a loophole. That was a crack in her armor. And I was about to drive a truck through it. The morning after I found the loophole, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Purpose. Direction. Like the fog that had been sitting on my chest since my dad's funeral was finally starting to lift. I had a plan. I had Jake. I had paint on the way. And I had every legal right to do exactly what I was about to do. But Karen wasn't done. Not even close. Because the thing about people like Karen is they don't just want to win. They want to crush you. They want you to feel small. They want you to know that they are in charge and you are nothing. And when they sense that you're not afraid of them, that's when they get dangerous. It was a Wednesday. I was at work. I'm an electrician. I do commercial jobs mostly. Warehouses. Office buildings. Apartment complexes. Good honest work. The kind of work that keeps the lights on, literally. I was up on a ladder running conduit through a drop ceiling when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Buzzed again. Ignored it. Then it buzzed a third time. 3 calls back to back. That usually means something's wrong. I climbed down. Pulled out my phone. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. And 1 voicemail. I pressed play. Mr. Turner. This is Karen Whitfield calling on behalf of the Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. I am calling to inform you that your 7-day compliance window expires in 72 hours. If the fence at 4717 Briarwood Lane is not restored to an approved color by Friday at 5 p.m., you will be assessed additional daily fines of $250. Furthermore, the board has authorized me to begin the process of placing a lien on your property. If the lien is not satisfied within 90 days, the association reserves the right to initiate foreclosure proceedings. This is not a threat, Mr. Turner. This is a promise. Have a nice day. Have a nice day. She actually said, have a nice day. I stood there in that warehouse holding my phone with drywall dust on my face and sweat dripping down my neck. My hands were shaking again. Not the angry shaking like before. This was different. This was fear. Real fear. Because foreclosure isn't a game. Foreclosure means losing your home. Foreclosure means my kids don't have a roof. Foreclosure means everything my dad left me disappears because a woman with a clipboard didn't like the color green. I played the voicemail again. Then I played it a third time. Every word was calculated. Every sentence was designed to intimidate. She rehearsed this. She probably practiced it in her bathroom mirror before she called. She enjoyed this. This was sport to her. My foreman Rick walked over and asked if I was okay. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost. I told him I needed 15 minutes. He nodded. Didn't ask questions. Good man. I walked outside to the parking lot. Sat on the tailgate of my truck. The same truck my dad taught me to drive when I was 16 in an empty church parking lot on a Sunday morning. I could still hear his voice. Easy on the clutch, son. Don't fight it. Let it catch. There you go. You got it. I stared at my phone. Karen's voicemail was still on the screen. And for about 5 minutes I seriously considered giving up. Just painting the fence beige. Paying whatever reduced fine they'd accept. Moving on. Keeping my head down. Being quiet. Being compliant. Being exactly what Karen wanted me to be. Then I scrolled to my photos. Opened the album labeled Dad. And there he was. Staff Sergeant William Turner. Standing in front of a Humvee somewhere in Kuwait. Olive green uniform. Olive green helmet. Dust on his boots. Sun on his face. Grinning like he owned the world. 34 years old in that photo. Same age I am now. He didn't back down. Not once. Not ever. He walked into places most people wouldn't drive through. He slept in dirt so his family could sleep in beds. He stood in front of bullets so strangers could stand in freedom. And he never once complained. Never once quit. Never once let someone bully him into being less than what he was. And I was going to let Karen Whitfield scare me with a voicemail? No, I was not. I called Jake from that parking lot. Jake. She left me a voicemail. She's threatening foreclosure. Jake was quiet for a second. Then he said something that changed everything. Good. That means she's scared. Scared people make mistakes, Marcus. Let her make hers. He was right. Karen was escalating because she sensed something. She could feel that I wasn't going to fold like everyone else. And instead of backing off, she was doubling down. Tripling down. Throwing every weapon she had at me, hoping something would stick. But she didn't know about the loophole. She didn't know about the paint that was already on its way to my front door. She didn't know that her own bylaws were about to be used against her. I drove home that night with a pit in my stomach and fire in my chest. When I pulled into the driveway, my son Daniel was sitting on the porch doing homework. He looked up and said something that almost knocked me over. Dad, are we going to lose the house? He'd heard me on the phone the night before. He'd been listening through his bedroom door. 12 years old and already carrying weight no kid should have to carry. I sat down next to him, put my arm around his shoulders, looked him straight in the eyes. No, buddy, we are not losing this house. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. This is our home. Grandpa made sure of that. And I'm going to make sure of it too. He nodded. Didn't say anything else. Just leaned into me and went back to his homework. That was the moment. Right there on that porch. That was the breaking point. Not Karen's fine. Not her voicemail. Not her threats. It was my 12-year-old son asking me if he was going to lose his home. That broke something inside me. And what grew in its place was something Karen Whitfield was not prepared for. I walked inside. Opened the garage. The paint had arrived early. For boxes stacked against the wall like soldiers waiting for orders. I texted Jake 2 words. Tomorrow. Dawn. He replied, I didn't sleep that night. Copy. Not a single minute. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan going around and around while my mind did the same thing. But I wasn't anxious. I wasn't worried. I was strategizing. Every detail mattered. Every step had to be perfect. Because if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. No shortcuts. No mistakes. No gaps in the armor that Karen could exploit. At 4 a.m. I gave up pretending to sleep. Got out of bed. Walked to the garage in my boxers and a t-shirt. Turned on the overhead light. And there they were. For boxes. 20 gallons of military-spec woodland camouflage paint. Forest green. Bark brown. Desert tan. Matte black. I opened each box one by one. Pulled out the cans. Lined them up on the workbench like a general inspecting his weapons before battle. I picked up the forest green. Popped the lid. The smell hit me immediately. That thick chemical paint smell that sticks to the inside of your nose. But underneath it was something else. Something familiar. It smelled like my dad's workshop. Like the garage he used to disappear into every Saturday morning to build birdhouses and fix lawnmower engines and refinish old furniture he found at yard sales. That garage smelled exactly like this. Paint and sawdust and purpose. I dipped my finger in, held it up to the light. Perfect. The exact shade of a forest floor after rain. Dark enough to disappear into shadows. Light enough to pass as an approved earth tone. Karen would never see it coming. Literally. Jake showed up at 5 a.m. He didn't knock. Just walked into the garage like he lived there. He had his paint sprayer in one hand and a rolled-up piece of graph paper in the other. He spread it out on the workbench and pinned down the corners with paint cans. Okay, here's the plan, he said. Jake had spent the entire previous evening designing a camouflage layout for my house. Not random splotches like a kid's art project. A real pattern. Calculated. Deliberate. He'd studied actual military camouflage designs online. Watched YouTube videos about how woodland camo works. How the shapes overlap. How the colors break up the outline of an object so the human eye can't register its shape. The man did homework. Serious homework. The layout was divided into zones. The front face of the house was Zone A. The left side was Zone B. The right side was Zone C. The back was Zone D. Each zone had a specific ratio of colors. 60% forest green and bark brown for the shaded sides. More desert tan on the sun-facing walls. Matte black accents along the edges and corners to break up the straight lines. Jake had even calculated the size of each color patch based on the square footage of the siding. If we do this right, Jake said, tapping the graph paper with his index finger. Someone could stand on the sidewalk and not even realize there's a house here. It'll blend right into the tree line behind your backyard. I stared at the layout. It was beautiful. It was insane. It was perfect. What about the roof? I asked. Jake grinned. Already thought about it. Your roof is dark gray asphalt shingle. We don't touch it. It already looks like rock or shadow from a distance. It'll blend naturally with the matte black accents. Nature does the work for us. The gutters, bark brown, top to bottom. The shutters, alternating, forest green and desert tan. Every other one creates a broken pattern so the eye can't track the symmetry. The front door. Jake paused, smiled, reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small brass stencil. It was the silhouette of a saluting soldier. The kind you see on veteran memorial decals. We paint the door matte black, he said. And we put this right in the center. Gold paint. So when Karen comes marching up to your porch to scream at you, the first thing she sees is a soldier saluting her. Your dad saluting her. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. My throat was too tight to say anything. We spent the next hour going over logistics. Jake would handle the sprayer for the large sections. I would do the detail work by hand. The brushes and rollers for the trim and the window frames and the corners where the sprayer couldn't reach. We'd start with the back of the house first. Zone D. That way if anyone drove by during the early stages they wouldn't see what we were doing. By the time we got to the front face, Zone A, it would be too late for Karen to stop us. Timeline. We estimated 8 to 10 hours for the full job. Start at 6 a.m. Finish by 4 p.m. One day. One shot. We'd have to move fast. Primer first on any bare spots. Then base coat. Then pattern overlay. Then detail accents. Jake said the military paint dried in 45 minutes in warm weather. It was forecast to be 78 degrees and sunny. Perfect painting weather. I made a checklist. Tape for the windows. Drop cloths for the bushes. Ladder for the second floor. Extension poles for the high spots Jake's sprayer couldn't reach. Extra rollers. Extra brushes. Mineral spirits for cleanup. And the stencil kit for the camouflage pattern edges. Jake had cut the stencils himself from thick cardboard using a box cutter and a straight edge. Organic shapes. Curved blobs. Jagged leaf patterns. Nothing geometric. Nothing man-made. Pure nature. At 5:45 a.m., I walked back inside. Daniel was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. He looked at me with those big serious eyes. Is today the day, Dad? Yeah, buddy. Today's the day. Can I help? I need you to do something important. I need you to be the lookout. You sit on the porch with your walkie-talkie. If you see Karen's silver Lexus coming down Briarwood Lane, you radio me immediately. Can you handle that? His face lit up like Christmas morning. He sat up straight, squared his shoulders, just like his grandpa used to do. Copy that. I smiled, ruffled his hair, poured myself one last cup of coffee from my dad's American flag mug. Then I walked to the garage, picked up a roller, looked at Jake. Let's go to war. Karen's silver Lexus turned onto Briarwood Lane at exactly 4:12 p.m. I know the exact time because Daniel logged it on a notepad like a soldier recording enemy movement. The kid was committed. Full commitment. She drove slowly, the way she always does when she's on patrol. Windows up, sunglasses on, one hand on the wheel, the other probably clutching a violation form. She passed Mr. Henderson's house, past the Patels, past Steve's freshly washed minivan, and then she reached my lot, and she kept driving. She drove right past my house, didn't stop, didn't slow down, didn't even turn her head, because she didn't see it. The camouflage worked so well that Karen Whitfield, the woman who could spot a grass blade 1/4 inch too tall from 50 feet away, drove right past my house like it didn't exist. Jake and I were standing in the garage with the door half open. We watched the Lexus glide past and continue down the street. Jake grabbed my arm. No way, he whispered. No way she missed it. But she did. She reached the end of Briarwood Lane, hit the cul-de-sac, turned around, and started driving back. Slower this time. Much slower. She was looking, scanning. She knew something was different, but she couldn't figure out what. Her brain was telling her there should be a house here, but her eyes couldn't find it. She passed my lot again. This time she slowed to a crawl. Her head turned. I could see her squinting behind those sunglasses. Then she stopped, right in the middle of the street, put the car in park, and got out. She stood on the sidewalk across from my property, hands on her hips, head tilted, mouth slightly open. For about 30 seconds she just stood there, processing, computing, trying to reconcile what she was seeing with what she expected to see. Then it hit her. What in the... I heard it from the garage. That shriek. That high-pitched Karen frequency that only HOA presidents and angry geese can produce. She marched across the street, heels clicking on the asphalt like a countdown timer. Up the driveway, past the olive green fence that started this whole thing, and straight to my front porch where she came face to face with the matte black door and the gold soldier saluting her from the center. She stopped, stared at the soldier silhouette. Her face went from confused to red to purple in about 4 seconds. The color change was honestly more dramatic than anything we'd painted that day. Marcus Turner, get out here right now. I walked out of the garage, calm, hands in my pockets. Jake was behind me leaning against the workbench with a beer. Daniel was on the porch. Lily was sitting on the steps eating a popsicle. Hey Karen, beautiful evening, isn't it? What have you done? What have you done to your house? I painted it. This is unacceptable. This is a violation. This is the most egregious breach of community standards I have ever seen in my life. I let her finish. Let her get it all out. Every word. Every hand gesture. Every dramatic gasp for air between sentences. She went on for about 3 minutes straight without stopping. It was impressive, honestly. The lung capacity alone deserved some kind of award. When she finally paused to breathe, I reached into my back pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper, unfolded it slowly, held it up so she could see it. Page 31, Section 22, Paragraph A. Your bylaws, the ones you wrote, the ones you enforce, the ones you've used to terrorize this neighborhood for 3 years. Let me read it to you, Karen. Prohibited exterior colors include bright neon or fluorescent colors including, but not limited to hot pink, electric blue, neon yellow, and lime green. I lowered the paper, looked her dead in the eyes. Tell me, Karen, do you see any hot pink on this house? Any electric blue? Any neon yellow? She was silent. What you see is forest green, bark brown, desert tan, matte black. Every single one of those colors appears on your approved earth tone palette. I checked. Twice. I have the documentation at home if you'd like to review it. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. For the first time in 3 years, Karen Whitfield had nothing to say. The woman who had a rule for everything and an answer for everyone was standing on my driveway, completely and utterly speechless. Jake stepped forward, took a slow sip of his beer. Looks like earth tones to me, Karen. From across the street, I heard Mr. Henderson yell from his porch. Me too. Earth tones. Then Mrs. Patel from her window. Definitely earth tones. Then Steve from his driveway. Nothing but earth tones over here. Then Mrs. Calloway. 83-year-old Mrs. Calloway. Standing on her front step with her walker. Voice shaking but loud enough for the whole block to hear. Looks like nature to me, Karen. Maybe you should try living in it. The whole street erupted. Cheering, clapping, laughing. People came out of their houses. People who had been silent for years. People who had paid fines without fighting. People who had swallowed their pride and painted their mailboxes beige and measured their grass and hidden their trash cans and kept their mouths shut. They were all out now, standing together, standing with me. Karen looked around, saw the faces, saw the numbers, saw the neighborhood she had controlled for 3 years slipping through her fingers like sand. She pointed at me, hand trembling. This isn't over, Marcus. Then she turned around, walked to her Lexus, got in, and drove away. Jake clinked his beer against mine. Yeah, it is. Karen didn't go quietly. Of course she didn't. That's not how people like Karen operate. When they lose control, they don't accept it. They escalate. They thrash. They burn everything they can on the way down. The next morning, I received 3 emails from the HOA. 3 separate violation notices. 1 for unauthorized exterior modification. 1 for failure to submit a color change request form. And 1 for creating a visual disturbance that diminishes community property values. Total fines assessed, $22,000. On top of the original $32,000. For painting my own house colors that were already approved in the HOA's own rulebook. I forwarded all 3 emails to my lawyer, my buddy Chris Patterson. We went to high school together. He became a real estate attorney, specializes in HOA disputes, handles about 30 of them a year. When he read the emails, he called me laughing so hard he could barely speak. Marcus, she's done. She just doesn't know it yet. Chris drafted a response that same afternoon. 7 pages, single-spaced, legal terminology that would make your head spin. But the summary was simple. Every color used on the property falls within the approved palette as defined by the community covenant. No bylaw prohibits the use of multiple approved colors in combination. No bylaw requires a specific pattern or design for approved colors. The fines are baseless. The threats are unenforceable. And if the HOA proceeds with any lien or foreclosure action, the homeowner will countersue for harassment, emotional distress, and violation of property rights. Estimated damages, $250,000. Chris sent the letter certified mail. Return receipt requested. The same way Karen sent me my original fine. Poetic justice. 2 days of silence. Nothing from Karen. Nothing from the board. No emails. No calls. No silver Lexus creeping down Briarwood Lane. For 2 days, the neighborhood held its breath. Then on Friday afternoon, I got a phone call. Not from Karen. From Bob Myers. The treasurer. The quiet one. The man who hadn't spoken an independent thought in 3 years. Mr. Turner. This is Bob Myers from the HOA board. I'm calling to inform you that Karen Whitfield has resigned as board president effective immediately. I sat down on my couch. Let the words sink in. She resigned. Yes, sir. She submitted her resignation this morning. Susan Carmichael has also stepped down as secretary. I am the acting board president until we can hold an emergency election. And the fines? All fines against your property have been rescinded. The original $10,000. The additional $22,000. All of it. Wiped clean. You owe nothing, Mr. Turner. And the lien? There was no lien. Karen never filed it. She didn't have the legal standing to do so. I reviewed the financials this morning and, well, there are some things the neighborhood needs to know about how funds have been managed. But that's a conversation for another day. He paused, cleared his throat, and then Bob Myers said something I never expected to hear from anyone on that board. Mr. Turner, I owe you an apology. I should have spoken up a long time ago. A lot of us should have. What Karen did to you and to this neighborhood was wrong. And I'm sorry it took your courage to finally make the rest of us find ours. I thanked him, told him I appreciated the call, hung up, and then I sat on that couch in complete silence for 10 minutes. It was over. It was actually over. The neighborhood held an emergency HOA meeting the following Tuesday. Not at 2 p.m. on a weekday like Karen used to schedule them. At 7 p.m. on a Tuesday night, so everyone could attend. And everyone did. Every house on Briarwood Lane. Every house on Maple Court. Every house on Birchwood Drive and Elm Street and Oak Circle. The community room at the clubhouse was standing room only. Bob was elected interim president. A new board was formed. Real people. Fair people. The Hendersons. Mrs. Patel. Steve with the minivan. People who actually cared about the neighborhood instead of controlling it. The first motion passed unanimously. Tommy Gelson's memorial bench was reinstated. They pulled it out of storage that same week. Put it right back under the maple tree where it belonged. Tommy's mom was there when they placed it. She sat down on that bench and ran her fingers over the brass plaque and whispered thank you so softly I almost didn't hear it. The second motion was a formal apology issued to every homeowner who had been unfairly fined under Karen's administration. Full refunds. Every dollar returned. The third motion was my favorite. They renamed the community park. It's now called Turner Park, after my dad, Staff Sergeant William Turner, the man whose favorite color started a revolution. Last week I was mowing my lawn. 3.5 inches. Maybe 3.6. Nobody's measuring anymore. Daniel was shooting hoops in the driveway. Lily was drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. Jake was on his porch across the street flying an American flag from an unapproved bracket. Car slowed down as it passed my house. A woman I didn't recognize rolled down her window and stared at the camouflage for a long time. Then she looked at me. Is that your house? Yes, ma'am. Why is it painted like that? I leaned on my mower, looked at the forest green and bark brown and desert tan and matte black covering every inch of my home. Looked at the gold soldier saluting from the front door. Looked at the olive green fence where it all began. Because my dad taught me to never surrender. She smiled, nodded, and drove away. I went back to mowing my lawn. 3.6 inches. Nobody said a word.